Hello, Garland Nixon here, and it's Thursday. We're hanging out with Larry C. Johnson. Let's talk. All right, everyone, let's hear it for Larry Johnson.
Yeah.
There we go.
I had to break out the lumberjack shirt today because this.
Oh man,
looking chilly in Florida.
I was getting ready to say it's a frozen wasteland here, and in Maryland, usually we get some 40s and 50s, and we're far enough south in the winter. We ain't getting no 40s and 50s. We're getting 20s and teens. My God, how cold is it where you are?
We're getting 40s. It was down. Let's see. Tonight it's supposed to be down to. Let me tell you here. I've got it set up in Celsius, but it's going to be. I think. Right now it's 19 degrees Celsius, 3 degrees Celsius tonight. So that's going to be like 36 degrees.
Woo! All the people there, they're not going to know how to act.
Oh no,
Floridians.
This is the kind of temperature where, when I lived over in Fort Lauderdale, and it got this cold, the iguanas, these big ass lizards, man, they fall out of the trees.
Yeah.
And in fact, I go out to my mailbox, I found a couple of frozen lizards. Got a little bitty lizards.
Whew. Yeah, it's a winter, and there's more. I think there's more coming. I think it's supposed to get colder. So
yeah, it's supposed to stay frosty through the weekend.
Good boy.
So
well, let's get to the big stuff, Larry. And this is a great article that Larry has. And as always, don't forget you guys, Larry has a great website. You got to go there, keep up with it. It's called Sonar 21. That's Sonar 21, and got lots of articles. Look at that, all these great articles. Good old Peter Hangler's contributing. And of course, you can support Larry and support the website and support us all by helping Larry with this important work. All right, let's get to it. He's got a great article. 3 scenarios for U.S. attack on Iran. We're going to go over those scenarios. Larry and I are going to talk about what we think of each of them. Larry, 3 scenarios for U.S. attacking Iran. What are your thoughts?
Well, simply put, there is the negotiated settlement. There is the U.S. takes out the Iranian leadership and brings about regime change. And then there is Donald Trump commits suicide, or he gets into a war that he can't get out of and gets his ass kicked. I'm hoping that we can still have time for option number 1, because there is a deal there to be made. It's a very simple deal. It's the United States that, though, it won't accept the terms. That deal is Iran will guarantee that it's not building a nuclear weapon, and that'll be guaranteed by China and Russia and Saudi Arabia. They'll look for somebody that they trust, and so they'll have that as a deal. Now, are they going to give up support for Hamas and Hezbollah? No, they're not going to do that. And that's where we get to one of these. This is a little bit off topic, but not much. What I call the great lies about Iran's support for, quote, terrorism. The United States makes a big deal about Iran's support for Hamas and Hezbollah, implying that they've killed tens of thousands of people, Hamas and Hezbollah. So I looked it up. I asked a simple question of a couple of AI search engines. How many Israelis have been killed by Iranian proxies since 1982? So I'm going back 44 years. And the number that comes up was less than 5,000. 82 is when Hezbollah started. 87 is when Hamas started. Well, excuse me. We lose that many people in a month in traffic accidents in Florida. So it is not. It's not this obscene level. Compare that to, we just learned today, the IDF finally admitted they've killed over 70,000 men, women, and children in Gaza. So in 2 years, Israel Israel has killed more Palestinians in just 2 years than Iran has Israelis in 44 years by an enormous amount. It's well over 13 times more. So I don't want to hear this crap about we got to stop Hamas and Hezbollah. They're trying to destroy Israel. No, they're not. They haven't done it. Yeah, have they written that? Yes, but they haven't done it. Not even close. It'd be one thing if they were killing 5,000 a year. All right, over 44 years. Yeah, that'd be a chunk of people. But that is not what has happened. And so that's going to be an unacceptable demand by, that's one of Trump's demands. Iran won't agree to that. They will agree to reduce enrichment and allow inspections of their nuclear sites to ensure that they're not building a nuke. They'll allow that. They'll be willing to make that deal, but lift those sanctions. The economic sanctions got to come off now. And Trump won't make that deal. So that's why I say that scenario, while it's preferred, not likely. What about the regime change? Iran, this is I call it the Billy Jack moment. Do you remember the movie Billy Jack?
Yep.
You remember where you stand there face to face with that sheriff, and I'm gonna take this foot here and put it on that side of your face, and there's nothing you can do about it. Okay, so Iran now knows the blow is coming. They're not sitting around reading the newspaper unaware that there's a threat. They know the blow's coming. They've dispersed their assets. They have called emergency meetings with different governors, and they've told them, say, hey, if we're killed, this is what you do. And they've gone to different leaders, said, if you're killed, this is your replacement. So, I mean, they're preparing for this across the board. And as Alistair Cook has noted from his own personal experience, Iran has at least 57 underground launchers. So they can launch from positions that are protected. And the U.S. doesn't have weapons to stop that. So that's why I say this scenario that they kill the top military and economic and political leadership, they destroy key military targets and sensitive economic targets, and they force a collapse of the regime, and then chaos ensues in Iran. That, I think, it's a possible scenario, but I think it's highly, highly, highly unlikely. The most likely one is the Trump administration has convinced itself that Iran is weak and we are strong, and that if we hit them, they'll collapse into I guess a supine position, go into the fetal position, curl up and cry, and then we'll win. It's not going to happen. And Iran has made it very clear, even if you do a symbolic strike on us, you're going to pay. We're going to hit. They'll hit every U.S. military base in the Persian Gulf, and they're going to attack Israel. And so they're being very open what they're going to do. They're telling people, this is what we're going to do. We're not going to do half measures. We're going to go balls to the wall. And they're not doing that to just try to, this is not like trash talking before an MMA event, where you're out and you're standing with your fist and, no, that's not this at all. They're doing this in part to make sure that the Saudis, the Chinese, everybody who depends at all a little bit on oil coming out of the Persian Gulf, which is a substantial part of the planet, they're letting them know, if we have to do this, that oil is getting cut off. That strait is going to get shut down. Nothing's coming out. And so as a consequence of that, you are starting to get phone calls like MBS. I think the Emirates out of Abu Dhabi, as well as the Turks. A lot are calling Trump up saying, don't do this. Don't do this. So that's going to be our only saving grace. They may be able to talk Trump off the ledge and get back into actual negotiations. That would be ideal. But they've, as I point out in my article, the United States has deployed more military assets, naval assets anyway, and air assets to the Persian Gulf right now than we did in June of 2025 when that last attack took place. Now, what we need to recognize, by having the carrier task force in the Arabian Sea, if it gets close enough, it's going to have to get close enough to Iran's shore in order to launch, whether it's Tomahawk missiles off of submarines or destroyers or cruisers, or to launch aircraft carrying air-launched JASSM missiles. Iran has the ability to strike and hit that fleet, and it can sink them. Let's assume, though, that Iran just fires like 100 missiles and drones a day at these ships. Those destroyers have these air defense systems on board that fire missiles up to, take them out. The problem then is reloading, because once you shoot those missiles, they've got a limited supply that's in those tubes. And it's not a simple matter of grabbing a couple of guys, grabbing a missile and shoving it in the tube. Oh, no. You got to go to a port specially equipped to load those missile tubes. Well, one of those exists in Bahrain. But if the Strait of Hormuz is closed, they ain't going to Bahrain. Now, I don't know about Diego Garcia, but the point is that if Iran does an intense missile drone barrage without let up, the ability of the U.S. aircraft carrier to stay in that position and fight is maybe as long as a week and a half, maybe. It does not have, because some genius in the War Department way back in the 80s or 70s thought it was a great idea that, unlike in World War II, where we had these oilers, these ships, they were basically, think of it like a floating Sam's Club, Price Club, BJ's, a floating warehouse where you had everything. And you need some fuel, we got your fuel. You need some more ammunition, we got your ammunition. Need some more canned ham, we got your canned ham right here. They had everything. And then someone said, oh, that's too costly. Let's set up distribution centers around the globe so that the ships will sell there, and then they can get replenished. Well, what happens when you're at war and you're wanting to sustain combat operations, and they're going to have to withdraw? And I tell you, the minute they withdraw, whether it's just to refuel, refit, whatever, that's going to be seen by many in the world as a defeat of the United States. So that's where it gets real. They haven't. I'm not sure the Trump folks have thought this through, because I think they've convinced themselves that they can easily beat the Iranians. That scenario 2 that I talked about, that'll bring about a complete collapse of the regime, set off a civil war, etc. That's an achievable scenario. I don't think it is.
Yeah, it's like they're going to fight a guy and they want to say, I think he's got a glass jaw. Well, he may not be the one with the glass jaw. You might be the one with the glass jaw, because here's the other side of it. And as we know, Iran has a lot of sophisticated missiles, and the likelihood is China and or Russia has been providing them with technology, whether it's defensive technology, offensive technology. We don't know.
Right.
We don't know, but it's pretty clear that they have, in fact, been provided with some technology. Well, what if they've got those darn Onyx missiles with 1,000-kilometer range, and some of these latest missiles that are really nasty? What happens if Trump says, we're striking Iran? And I always say this business about striking, that implies a single punch. Bam. Well, if I strike some guy in the bar, the fight ain't over. He's going to start striking me. He's going to pick up a chair and start wailing away. You just can't walk into a bar and I think I'll strike that guy. He might kick your ass.
Yeah, unless you're Mike Tyson in his prime. Okay, he could get away with one punch and put somebody down. But no, most people, and the United States the United States right now still thinks it's Mike Tyson in his prime. We're Mike Tyson, the 63-year-old guy now, okay?
Yeah.
And as physically imposing as he still may be, he ain't what he used to be. And that's where, and we saw the warning signs of that for the United States. August 2021, what happened in Afghanistan? How about March 2025 in the Red Sea? After 7 weeks, we pulled out. So, you say, yeah, but we kicked their ass in Venezuela. Yeah, when you've bought off everybody on the inside and they're cooperating with you, yeah, that's easy. I saw
And even
that.
that wasn't a war. We flew
Yeah.
in and flew out. Even that wasn't an actual, you know what I mean? You flew in and it was like a special ops mission. Even then, it wasn't like some war where missiles or things it was just you flew in, and now they're going to act like they just, defeated the Russians and the Chinese combined. You did a special ops mission and it was successful. Fair enough.
It was a permissive environment.
There you go.
Yeah, it reminds me of, when I first started at State and we did exercises for what was called the emergency support team. One element of the emergency support team was a CIA group called the Incident Response Team, IRT. And in these exercises, we tried to simulate there was a hostage situation in a foreign country, and the emergency support team was sent there to help the embassy and work with the local government in providing negotiators and intelligence collection. So whenever the very first exercise we did was down in Mississippi, in Biloxi, outside Biloxi, and the CIA had showed up in advance because they knew where the target house was. They went into that target house in advance and wired it so that they would know what was being said. So that way they could, quote, release intelligence. And I'm thinking, yeah, that's how the real world works. The bad guys take someone hostage. They call you up and say, hey, here we are. We're going to be away from the house for a while. Come in, wire it for sound, and then you can it's cheating. And that's what we did in Venezuela. We cheated. We had it wired in such a way as a permissive environment.
And Iran, do you remember, I think it was about 20 years ago, there was an infamous exercise. I forgot the name of it. And they brought back this guy who was an old general or admiral or something. And he did this exercise. And Iran has all of these small, high-speed missile boats. And basically, the guy used some unconventional tactics and was beating the crap out of the U.S. And they had to stop and change the rules. Because, you ever watch, what was it? The Outlaw, what was it? No. I forgot the name of the movie. It was great. But these two guys were going to fight. And he says, the one guy says, you got to fight our guy. And he's this big guy. He's like 6'7". He's got a big knife. And the guy that's going to fight him is like small, looking at him. He goes, okay, first of all, we got to establish rules. And the guy spits. He goes, there ain't no rules. He kicks the guy in the balls and says, and the guy falls. He goes, okay, have it your way, right? My point being, if you're fighting a smaller guy, there ain't no rules. You got traditional rules. What happened during the Revolutionary War? They were used to the Queensberry rules where they all marched. They hid in the woods. Why? Because they didn't have as many people. You're fighting them. They playing by the rules. They're not playing by the traditional rules. They have no choice but to do unorthodox things. What happens if they're like, okay, you're expecting us to get you here, but you got a lot of bases in Africa. They'll never be expecting it. So we'll hit you this base in Africa, this one, hit this one, and this one, and that. Now you're saying, okay. And now all of a sudden, some of your bases in Africa are getting hit because you never suspected that they were planning on hitting you there. You don't know. They've got to do unorthodox things. It's dangerous.
Well, not only that, let's consider that, there were a number of Israeli assets already in place inside Iran last June when they carried out those attacks, and a lot of launch was from within. As a result of that, Iranian counterintelligence went on a terrorist spy hunt and rolled up a large number of Israel's network, but not entirely. There was still a number intact, which was then activated December 28th, December 29th, when the protests erupted and then those protests turned violent in Iran. And once Iran figured out with the help of Russia and China about the Starlink terminals, they were able to use those to go out and track down the other people who are involved with the Israeli net and the U.S. network. So, going into this conflict right now, the foreign intelligence is probably more blind than at any time they have been heretofore, and they'll know a lot less, not more. So, could they pull off a surprise or two? Maybe, but it's not likely because Israel's already sort of shown all of its hands, exploding pagers and killing Hania, the Palestinian rep, in his hotel room in Tehran, and then the attempts to kill all of the religious, military, political leadership last June. They're ready now.
And I mean, even if you have a ship, they've fired as much as 300 drones at a time at Israel.
Yeah.
So I don't care how good you got a carrier, but somebody fires 100 drones and a group of missiles. It just overwhelms your ability to track them on your systems. They just overwhelm you. And even if you get the missiles, those drones, you get hit by a bunch of those drones, you may sink anyway. So and here's the other part, and I like your politically. Let's just say Trump strikes him, man, and dead soldiers start coming home. His political career, everything is finished immediately.
Yeah. He can talk peace president all he wants, so all they'll see is a war president. And the vast majority of American people, they don't want another war. They don't want a war. And just what we saw in the streets of Minneapolis. Even look, you can see that there are a lot of outside forces behind this. When you got a group of people, when you got 100 people showing up wearing the same T-shirt, don't tell me that this is organic. All right, when they're all showing up with the same printed signs, it ain't organic. But I mean, it's genuine. But there's money behind it. But still, those protests are reflecting some serious concern about how things are being handled. And then on top of it, so I point out that unrest at home is already hurting Trump. In fact, that's why he did a complete 180 after they killed that nurse. And God, I was, it gets us a little off topic, but I was shocked at the blatant, fascism being shown by the likes of Kristi Noem, J.D. Vance, and others. They're basically saying, hey, just because this guy had a concealed carry, just because he had a license and he's in a concealed carry state, he can't go to a protest with carrying a gun. And I made the point when I wrote an article. I said, hey, let's assume that the protest was against in Minneapolis. They were confiscating guns from legitimate gun owners, and so they had a protest. And as part of that protest, you showed up with a concealed carry firearm. Oh, that's different. Oh, yeah, right. No, it's not different. Same thing, same principle. But anyway, this kind of when they're seeing that kind of unrest here in the United States, you would think it would give Donald Trump pause before, I got enough fires here at home. I don't need to go start a new fire next door.
Yeah. Well, and that, here's a man who is completely complying with the law when it comes to firearms. The law says you have to do this, this, this. He's complying with the law. The guns carried. He never made any attempt. They took it from him. You could see the video. They took the gun from him. Now, I may disagree with them grabbing him or whatever the case may be. But if police officers are going to arrest somebody or whatever, and the person has a gun, it's legitimate for them to remove the gun from the person. Like I said, I got a lot of issues with everything they doing there, but the guy's gun was gone. He was unarmed. You took his gun off, and then this other guy shoots him a bunch of times, and they're celebrating. And I'm like, what the hell kind of, what kind of training? You took the man's gun?
You saw that
It was crazy. The whole thing was crazy. I see this woman over there, and I see this officer push her. I'm looking at it, and I see this woman's there, and I see an officer. He didn't try to grab her or arrest her. He shoved her, and she goes down. Then I see this guy like go over there. Then they grab him. Then they're wrestling with him, and he's down on his knees. You see his gun go up. You see this other guy, and something I brought up. One, we were all trained. I don't know if you've ever done this. We had a room with every kind of gun you could think of. And and I used to do this in the academy. You know, when I ran our academy, if the FBI would come in, every kind of gun you could think of. And what did we do? What we preached was, there's a gun laying there, and it ain't your gun. How do you make it safe? You don't just want to pick up guns. Is the safety on, is all that. When you touch a gun that is not your gun, the first thing you should be trying to do is, how do I make it safe? Won't open it up, makes it. So this guy grabs the gun. It looks like he's running around and helping with it, and the damn thing goes off. Yeah. You know, it wasn't any, take this gun out. If I got that gun, okay, these other guys are struggling with him. You aren't. You got that gun in your hand. The first thing you need to do is make it safe. You need to make sure that it doesn't go off accident. And you know, those 6 hours, I thrill with them anyway.
Yeah.
Anyway, go ahead.
Well, this is a SIG 320, and they do have that reputation for what's called an uncommanded detonation, I think is the technical term.
Yeah.
You know, it went off by itself. And you can see clearly, he grabs it, and then as he's moving, he takes like 2 steps, and you can see the shot go off. And the other guys, so the one officer that was standing the first to draw and shoot, when he sees the gun, and because this Alex Preddy was wearing the gun in what they call an inside the waistband holster, and it was right above his right butt cheek. And so when the cop sees that, and he draws, seeing the gun. Now, I don't know if anybody at that time was hollering gun, but the other cop that grabbed it pulls it out and starts moving away. As he's moving, when that gun goes off, the guys with his gun drawn says, "Oh my God, he's shooting!" and they start shooting. Now, you know as well as I do that when the investigators sit him down and say, "Okay, what did you see as a threat of you have to be an imminent threat of death or serious bodily injury? What was in his hands that led you to believe that you had to shoot?" Because video shows clearly he's holding a cell phone and nothing. And you know, this I looked at this, just very, very poor training on the part of these Border Patrol, ICE personnel, and I blame all of that on leadership. And you know that Bovino is a buffoon at a minimum.
Yeah. Yeah, people don't understand the importance of training when it comes to guns. You know, all the things about guns. I taught an academy, and I train people. When you touch a gun and it ain't yours, first thing you do is make it safe. You don't want it to actually go off. He could have shot himself in the foot, shot another officer, could have hit, ricochet. Any terrible thing could happen. You don't just grab a gun and start running. He like grabbed it and just started running with it. Yeah. Like somebody who knew nothing about guns would do.
Yeah.
I couldn't tell if his hand was inside on the trigger. I couldn't tell.
No, you can see he was actually holding it. He didn't have his finger up along the slide outside, but he wasn't inside the trigger guard.
Okay.
Yeah. So that I looked for that and said, oh, so I mean, this was you could say it was an accidental shooting because in the sense that they thought he was shooting at them. But that, again, you don't get to think or believe. You got to know. You got to see. You can't just shoot somebody because you think they have a gun, or shoot them because they're an asshole. You know, what I find so disgusting is a lot of people are circulating. The video footage has emerged of this kid kicking a ICE vehicle, breaking the rear tail light. Yeah, he engaged in some violence. They should have arrested him, charged him, put him in jail for that. But just because he does that doesn't mean he deserves to be shot. You know, exactly. We get so cavalier about taking human life. And
It's like looking in the past, finding something somebody did to justify it today. Well, way back when he did this, a couple weeks ago, he violated the law. That's irrelevant. You already know Tennessee versus Garner. At the time that the trigger was pulled is the only thing that matters, not what he did before, 6 months ago, 3 weeks ago, whatever the case may be.
Right.
Could you take it into context? If this guy was wanted for killing 5 cops, sure, you could take that into context. But he wasn't wanted for killing 5. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So the bottom line is, as I looked at that, I'm like, man, this is a terrible thing. And then they came out saying things. Trump, who said, yes, we're going to protect the First Amendment and the Second Amendment. We ain't doing a good job of protecting the Second Amendment when you literally say, hey, he brought a gun, so we can kill him.
Yeah, he's a terrorist. Yeah, Christine Holmes said he was a terrorist for bringing a gun to a protest. Sorry. You absolutely can bring a gun to a protest, particularly, let's say, if it's standing up for Second Amendment rights.
Yeah.
What the hell is wrong with these people? I mean, this is, these guys are just as bad as any other fascist that's occupied government offices. They want to complain about the Democrats. They're just as bad, if not worse.
It's getting to be that what people keep saying, 6 in one hand, half a dozen in the other. Do you remember after, and I brought this up, after the 2021 election, after all the FBI riot known as January 6th, right?
Yeah, right.
And after that, Biden and company brought all of these National Guardsmen to the Capitol. I mean, to White House, and they put like fences around it, and they had National Guard, and people were like, I don't know about that. You're bringing all these national, and a lot of conservatives and a lot of people that live in the DC, I was working in DC, were like, I'm not comfortable with all these National Guardsmen running all over the place. You're bringing troops to the street, and people are uncomfortable with it. When the Biden administration was doing it, and I was uncomfortable with it, right?
Yeah.
Well, now Donald Trump's doing what a lot of people complained about Biden doing it. Putting troops on the street. I'm never comfortable when the feds start coming to the streets, because it has the look like if the American people want to protest or dissent, then perhaps that dissension will be put down. And that's the way I felt. I felt like with Biden, like, yeah, they're going to call anybody who may want to protest against Biden, which they have a right to. They're going to say, oh, it's another January 6th protest, and start shooting over something crazy. You're always concerned that that's going to happen.
Well, what really bothers me is the lack of enforcement of laws, and it's on both sides. That when you had the riots surrounding the death of George Floyd, and people were looting and destroying property, I mean, they ought to be detained. They ought to be charged. This kid Pruitt or Pretty, when he on that day, he wasn't doing anything to justify police putting hands on him. He legally, under technical definition, he did assault the officer by putting his hand on him, but it was he wasn't trying to hurt him. He wasn't trying to punch him. He was just trying to get between him and the woman that the officer was assaulting. But even then, there was no justification whatsoever for shooting him. But we draw the parallels that the disregard for human life, it's there present on the streets of Minneapolis. It's there present in the Caribbean Ocean, where we're killing people in boats. It's there what we're getting ready to try to do to Iran, where we're going to kill some other people without regards to their to the fact that they're human beings. So that's why I say this is actually a broader problem with the United States here, and it's not just confined to Trump. I mean, it happened under Biden, and it happened under Obama, and it happened under George W. Bush, and it happened under Bill Clinton. So we got a systemic problem, not a partisan problem.
Well, I've said this for a while. Anytime you see one party walk through a door, the other party unlocked it to let them go through.
Yeah.
Right. Let's face it. Biden put a $25 million bounty on Maduro and Trump opened it. So I don't want to hear the Democrats. So, I mean, I'm in opposition to it. I'm like, this is a violation of international law and it's a violation of the Constitution. I don't agree with this, right? But the Democrats are the ones who opened the door because they declared him some kind of a drug dealer and said, okay, we're going to put a bounty on him. They started all of that crap. And now we sit here with the lies and all kind of madness. And here's the thing let me ask you this, Larry, since this would be your area of expertise. You know, one of the things that I always say to young people, kids, my daughter, when she was growing up, when you're making a decision, think about the worst possible thing that could happen and ask yourself, am I prepared for that? Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Man, this thing in Iran potentially can go really, really. What are some of the potential things that you could think of that could go really awry here?
You sink an aircraft carrier, gets sunk. You got 4,000 dead sailors, or more. You know, some of those hold over 5,000. You know, the loss of life at Al Udeid Air Force Base. There's also there what's called the KAOC, Combined Air Operations Center. So, you know, first we got the loss of life. Second, it could actually trigger an escalation where Israel might be tempted to use a nuclear weapon. Then all of a sudden, the unwillingness of countries like Russia and China to intervene will disappear. Because now they'll be seeing that the West they're using a nuke on one of their allies. Let me put it this way: it's not going to make the world safer. Just like you know, we continue to perpetuate this myth. All we got to do is kill this one person, kill Soleimani. That was the message told Trump: kill this guy. And man, everything's good. We're going to have, we'll bring peace to the Middle East. It didn't work. All we got to do is get rid of Saddam Hussein. That'll fix it. That didn't work. All we got to do is get rid of Bashar al-Assad. That'll calm things down. That didn't work. I mean, you know what? The plan, this recipe book we keep following, we think we're making chocolate mousse and it ends up tasting like shit every time. So you ought to say, you know what? We need to change what we're doing.
Well, you know, even a shutdown of the Strait of Hormuz. I mean, a lot of what happens with oil is speculation, oil futures and all that kind of stuff, and all of these derivatives based on oil. Well, what happens when all of these things fall through and some $250 billion in derivatives just collapses overnight? What, you know, when all the oil futures bets go bad, and they all, just like in 2008, they all go to the AIG or whoever and say, well, we bet on that and we lost, time to pay up. And AIG says, we can't pay everybody. Everybody's bets went bad at the same time. What are we going to do? Bail them out? We got a war going on, and we're going to bail them out. And you look at your economy, which is fragile as it is. The only thing that's even faking the numbers is AI right now. And this thing just goes to pieces. And now the dollar, I mean, you're playing with destruction of your economy. And that's if you're lucky. And it don't, as you said, it doesn't turn into World War III.
Well, not only that, we've already, I postulated that one thing that might possibly give Trump pause is what's happening with the gold and silver market. Because if you've been following the price of gold and silver, just like you're talking with oil, those prices have literally exploded in the last 3 weeks, 4 weeks. You know, like middle of October, or even into November, you could get an ounce of silver for about $50. Now it's you can get an ounce of silver for $114. So that is more than doubled in price. And what's going on is a lot of the countries are selling off, getting rid of the U.S. Treasury bills, buying gold and silver. And so that's affecting both the price of the U.S. dollar, it's losing value, and it's leading people to harder assets where they're basically seeking to free themselves of the U.S. financial system. So this if we attack Iran, that is going, as you just pointed out with oil, going to put just one more log on that blazing fire, and it will create much more mayhem than we already have. And so, and then on top of it, if it ends up to shutting off the supply of a significant amount of oil out of the Persian Gulf, that again, that's going to have global consequences. More losers than winners. You know, countries like Nigeria and Russia will benefit because they've got ample oil that's not affected. But you know, the countries that are dependent upon that oil, including India and China, Malaysia, Indonesia, it could be very difficult.
Well, Europe's finished because they're going to close off the Red Sea too, and Europe's going to be the first to go. You know, Europe is finished. Where they're not getting oil from Russia, well, officially anymore. They'll be closed off from there, and it's in the middle of the winter, and it's freezing cold.
Yeah,
Europe, you can just put a you know, as they say, drop the, you know, put the flag, take the flag down, and turn the lights out when you leave Europe, because that whole party is over. You just look at it and you say, what is really necessary? And that's why you see people getting so furious at Zionism. You see more and more people, whether they're lefty liberals, whether they're conservatives, whether they're just so many people are starting to say, what the hell are we doing with Israel? And our decisions relative to them are dragging us down to hell.
Yeah. No, it is this. It's creating a real pushback. So the Israel doesn't come out, you know, that'll be one of the big losers if the United States proceeds with this attack. Iran has also made it clear to Israel, we're going to hit you and hit you hard. And again, Iran pulled some punches on Israel the last go round. The U.S. air defense assets are going to be ineffective against what Iran fires. So, like I said, this was anybody think that they can win this, much less control this on the Western side, are crazy.
I also would think this, you know, the BRICS countries work together. You know, I think there's people looking at the USA and you guys are losing it. You're going nuts. I would think if the US did something this reckless, that maybe China and or Russia and some other countries would say, we had enough. We had enough with you guys. We're going to sanction you. We're not going to sell you, whatever the case may be. I think you can pretty much forget rare earth. They're getting cut off, point blank. But right. I think China may say, we're dumping our dollars, and you know what? We're just cutting off. We're not doing it. We may have to take a hit, but your shelves will be empty. Everything will be empty. We're moving on. You know, I think we, you know, that other countries, what do we get? You know, pretty much everybody gets most of their uranium from Russia. In the West, we're still getting most of our, I think they like, what is it, 80% of the uranium or something in the West. So I think that some of these major countries will say, you guys have gone over the edge and we're just not going to do business. And those kinds of things happen, as you said, when people lose faith in the US economy, because that's the only thing holding it together, is that people have faith in it.
Yeah, well, and that's what we're seeing take place now in the silver market. And gold market. So when gold blew through $5,000 earlier this week, and silver blew through 100, and now is up. You know, the exchanges that manage, at least let's call it the paper bets on precious metals, they are in real trouble. One way they try to reset the price or get the market under control is they take people who have bought futures contracts, say, okay, I want to pay X amount for silver in the future. And to do that, you know, so they've got $100,000 contract and they've been asked to put up $5,000. Well, the exchange, like the COMEX, can go back and say, oh, sorry, situation has changed. If you want to still have that contract honored, you're going to have to put in another $15,000. And this puts a squeeze on people who may not have that much cash around. So at that point, they have to sell, or, you know, they have to they have to take delivery on the silver at the price that it is, which means they got to pay out a lot more money. If you've agreed, to buy X amount at a certain, say $90, but the price is now 115, you got to pay the 115. So it goes back to what you said about the lack of faith in the marketplace, because one of the reasons that from 1972 on that most countries lined up to let the US dollar be the reserve currency, the currency that was used for all oil purchases, is they looked at the United States, that the political system was stable. You didn't have a lot of unrest. The judicial system was honest. They weren't going to steal your money. You didn't have to worry about them, scamming you. But all those assumptions now are out the window. That when the West, the United States, seized Russian assets, what happened to the protection in a bank? And just as when we started talking, the price of silver was 114. It's gone up $2, and we've been talking now for about 50 minutes. It's gone up $2.
Wow.
Yeah, so I mean, this is the systems. The paper system is broken, and what is being signaled by a lot of the BRICS countries is they're selling their dollars and they're turning to gold and silver, and they're going to deal in their own currencies. And once we've been like that kid that goes to college whose parents pay the credit card bill. He never had to. He could spend whatever he wanted and didn't have to worry about paying it. That's no longer. Now we got to pay, and that means you got to adjust your lifestyle. So you may have been living large when mom and dad were paying for it, but now that you got to pay for it, forget about it.
And we're looking at that. In fact, let me bring this up, because since we're already talking about that, Larry has another great article that is specifically about what we're discussing right now. And his article is called, "Are the BRICS countries a key factor in the massive surge in the price of silver and gold?" Right?
Yeah.
And talk about that a little bit. We got about another 10 or 15 minutes.
Yeah. Well, so in the past, if you were going to buy oil, and let's say you were going to buy the oil from Venezuela and you were China, you would go on the international market, you would buy dollars. So you would convert your currency, the renminbi, into dollars, and you'd give those dollars to Venezuela. Well, what has been happening now with the advent as BRICS is coming into its own, they've stopped buying dollars. They're using their own currency. And there's probably a better example between China and Brazil. So China and Brazil now, instead of having to use dollar as a way to settle a trade, they're using their respective currencies. They figure out what the value of the renminbi is against the Brazilian cruzeiro, and never have to touch a U.S. dollar. Well, that means the demand for dollars is going away. And then on top of it, China has created a new system for moving money overseas from point A to point B. The old system that's still in place for the West is called SWIFT. And people need to understand that's really an ironic name, because there ain't nothing swift about it. They could call it molasses or slow. But what it is SWIFT is essentially an analog email system, where I would send, "Hey, Garland, I'm just sending you an email telling you that I'm sending you $500 to your account at Bank of America." And the problem with email, as most people know, is you got this thing called spam. So those messages can get lost in spam. But what China has created is a digital platform called the Cross-Border Interbank Payment System, and it works in seconds, fractions of seconds. So you got more countries coming to that. So where the U.S. used to be the king of the hill, because the dollar was king, and we could tell everybody what they needed to do. They had to obey us. Now they don't. They've got alternatives, and that's one of the reasons they're selling. Instead of continuing to lend money to the United States by buying its T-bills, they stopped buying the T-bills. They're selling them off. And even Japan right now is in a big credit crunch, and they're talking about selling off their dollar holdings in order to stay afloat. So with that driving, the demand for dollars goes down. The price of the dollar. So let's put it in liquor terms. Let's say you wanted to buy a bottle of a good Polish vodka, like Żabrówka, and to the Poles are willing to sell it to you right now at $10 a bottle. But then because the value of the dollar has changed and it's lost value, that $10 bottle of vodka you used to buy is now $14. Now, it's not that the price of the vodka got more expensive, it's that your dollars got worth less. And one of the effects of a weak dollar, I'm sorry to get into all the economics here, but people need to understand that when they talk about getting a weak dollar, that's seen as potentially a good thing, because whatever you make is going to be cheaper for somebody to buy overseas. So they will buy more of it. And so it's seen as a way to help boost the economy. But to the extent that you're bringing products in from outside, you're paying more for those. It adds to inflation. And so you can get into a pretty ugly situation where all of a sudden you've got double, triple digit inflation. And when that hits, it's devastating for the middle class. The very wealthy aren't really touched by it much. The poor, they're poor. But the middle class, who got used to having a pretty good lifestyle, that disappears. And then that leads to even more political unrest in society. So that's sort of what we're setting ourselves up for here with by instead of figuring out how to work with BRICS, instead of threatening every country in the world with tariffs, and instead of trying to punish other countries by seizing their assets, if we'd be more of a good neighbor, we might have a better shot at staying afloat economically. But I think the decisions we are making are such that it disincentivizes other countries to want to help us.
I think you're right. The last, just some interesting article came out. Well, we have less than 5 minutes here, but so but we need to take a look at this. I definitely want to get your thoughts on it. And this is in RT. Putin agreed to halt strikes during extreme cold in Ukraine. Trump, that's Trump. The Kremlin has not commented. He says, because of the extreme cold, I personally asked President Putin not to fire on Kiev and the cities and towns for a week. He said, Putin agreed to that. We're very happy with the decision, right? However, there's apparently we haven't heard anything from the Russians, and a Ukrainian MP said, there is an agreement on energy truce. There's no date for this, for a start of this truce. Well, as you said, sometimes Donald Trump will kind of get an idea that somebody said something or that something happened that may not be. Ukraine's in deep and serious trouble. They're freezing their asses off, and I don't think the Russians are going to give them a break.
Yeah, no. The general staff's not going to let up. They understand they're winning the war. And hey, it's winter time. I've, past winters have been pretty mild over both Kiev and Moscow. Not now. They've got a lot of snow. I did an interview with a chat with Sergei Karaganov earlier today, and he was talking about it. He said, man, we got some serious winter here. There are some videos out of Kamchatka, which is out on the east coast of Russia. They've got 50 to 70 foot drifts of snow. I mean, literally, there is this one. They've created a sled ride. It goes from the 9th floor of this one building, and all the snow, they've packed the snow. The snow had blown up against the building, so they packed it down kids are literally sledding down the side of this building from 90 feet up. I'll forward it to you on Telegram. It's unbelievable.
But the idea that the Russians now, when they got, look, this is a real Russian winter. This is the kind of Russian winter that the Wehrmacht and that what's his name, the French under Napoleon found out about, a real Russian winter and just how hard it is to fight. I don't think the Russians are going to back off and give them a break. They got them where they want them now, and I think their position is going to be, well, if you want to cry uncle, we can work it out. Other than that, this is called war.
Yeah. No, they're looking for Putin. I think Trump is engaged in some more confabulation. He's saying something that he believes is true. He honestly believes it, but it's not true.
Yeah, I think you're right, and I think the people in Kiev know it. It's time for them to give up the ghost, buddy. This thing's over, but they won't hold on. I mean, they won't give up. Sonar 21, that is the website for Larry. And look right here, don't forget, support us. You want to click on that, you can use PayPal, you can use PayShoot, Patreon, Buy Me a Coffee. And as you know, we always talk about the people who are doing this stuff. You know, nobody's making a fortune. People are trying to make enough to keep his website up and to keep going with all the work. So thanks everybody. Go over to sonar21.com where you'll get lots of information. And if you can, do your best to support them, and make sure you share sonar21.com on all your social media platforms. And of course, share this out there. And there's a new platform called Upscrolled that everybody seems to be joining. I don't know that much about it, but I'm joining it. It seems to be growing, and we'll see what happens. Thanks a lot, Larry. Look forward to talking to you again soon.
Thanks, brother. Appreciate it.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Share this on all your social media platforms.